do you think Republicans can justify blasting Bidenomics when what they're saying about his policies is objectively false?
People need to stop paying attention to the polls and start paying attention to what Joe Biden is actually doing. And the numbers don't lie. Republicans do.
The numbers don't lie. What? What is she looking at? What polls are they talking about? A new CBS poll, for one, most respondents describing the economy as uncertain, along with calling it bad and struggling. Only 34% approve of Joe Biden, the job he's doing on the economy. And when asked what comes to mind when voters think of Bidenomics, half of respondents said inflation, smart Americans. 49% said higher taxes, smart Americans. Well, only 32% said job creation. No comment. Joining me now, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator Vance, well, look, they are going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money selling Bidenomics. My point on Friday night is a point I'm going to state again for those who missed it. If Republicans get caught in the culture wars and leave the economic lane to Biden, anything's possible. Do you not agree?
That's exactly right, Laura. Most Americans are voting their pocketbook. And look, Biden economics is a failure, and we need to simply point that out and make our case to the American people that we can make their lives better. I mean, look, to the average Ohioan, Bidenomics is higher food prices, it's higher gas prices. It's the fact that if your children can't afford a home these days because interest rates are so high and all of the homes are going to Chinese investors and illegal aliens who are coming in and taking them. Bidenomics is the immiseration of the American middle class. It's the average American family has $500 or fewer in the bank account and is worried about taking a vacation. What Bidenomics is doing is taking American citizens and turning them into permanent renters in their own country. People who can't afford a home, people who can't afford a slice of their own nation. That is not a record of achievement, but Republicans cannot forget it and cannot ignore that reality. Most Americans right now feel very precarious in their economic lives. They have every right to, and they have every right to expect the government that puts their interests first. That's the argument Republicans have to make. And if we do, Laura, I think we're going to win a landslide 2024 and get a chance to actually govern this country.
Now, Trump is way ahead of everybody in the field. I mean, it's just stunning. I mean, on every demographic group he's leading. DeSantis went to New Hampshire today, I think, to try to reset away from the cultural issues. He didn't listen to what we were trying to say earlier, but set away from that and go back to the economy. I know you've endorsed President Trump, but at this point, do you agree that a discussion about like slavery and a school curricula versus how much is gas going to be in 2025? There's no contest there, what people want to hear.
Yeah, look, Laura, obviously the cultural stuff matters. The life issue matters. Defending American values matters. And you and I agree on that. We also have to recognize that most Americans are voting their pocketbooks, and rightfully so. If you think of the entire Trump campaign, he's still talking about issues that most conventional Republicans are terrified of, including, by the way, his competitors in the Republican primary field. He's talking about trade. He's talking about the fact that immigration steals wages from working and middle-class Americans, that if we have 10 million, 15 million illegal aliens coming in and taking homes from the average American citizen, then the next generation isn't going to be able to afford to buy a home. That is what people care about. And it is still, honestly, it's an insult and a terrible verdict on the Republican Party that Donald Trump is still one of the few people in our movement who's still talking about these issues. The rest of the movement, the rest of the party really has to catch up here.
Well, speaking of, this is right in your wheelhouse, Senator. News came out this afternoon, Bloomberg reporting that a political action committee with close ties to billionaire Charles Koch has raised now $78 million in the first half of 2023, with pretty much the sole purpose of preventing President Trump from becoming the Republican nominee. It's Americans for Prosperity PAC or something like that. Your reaction to that development?
Well, we have to remember what that money wants. And what that money wants is two things, Laura. It wants wide open borders, and it wants to continue to ship our industrial base, all of our good jobs and our manufacturing to China and the rest of East Asia. They hate Donald Trump because they hate the agenda, and they hate the fact that working class Americans are finally starting to fight back. We cannot ignore what's at stake in this election. This is the main reason, Laura, I would say that folks should support Donald Trump for president, because if Trump loses, either the primary or the general election, all of the old school establishment Republicans will try to take us back to the losing agenda that led to the immiseration, the end in many ways of the traditional American middle class. If Trump can win, and if he can pull out a governing agenda over the next 4 years, what we have a chance to do is to reset the Republican Party. It's not shocking the old guard is putting hundreds of millions of dollars against Donald Trump. The question is, what do we do? And we have to fight for it.
Yeah, well, DeSantis's message is very similar to Trump's. And if you listen to him in New Hampshire today, it was get rid of most favored nation status for China. And, you know, there are a lot of good things there. But, I mean, Trump is just destroying the field right now. Fascinating. But Koch brothers, or Charles Koch, is very worried. Senator, great to see you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.